practice of gratitude will bring out a side of you that you always had, but you never knew you did. It'll help you traverse through every situation that you come across in life that you seem as broken or challenging. With a simple task of gratitude, it goes a long way. So either say it out loud, write it down in a journal, and then as you do that, step out in faith, in action, and help someone. A lot of times, you're not going to worry about your own issues, especially when you're helping someone else.
If I can shift my mindset to vulnerability as my strength, it will increase my confidence and also encourages authentic expression. We also work on with the guys embracing discomfort, because being vulnerable often will mean stepping out of their comfort zone. So they have to embrace the discomfort and view it as a sign of growth rather than just being uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with it.
That's fascinating, because then vulnerability isn't this position where I'm exposed to something negative. Right. Vulnerability now is actually a way for me to become more authentic version of myself, which is a source of strength.
Hey y'all, Josh Tomioni with the 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐞 Podcast. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Would you do me a favor? It will only take you a couple seconds. Whether you're listening or watching right now, will you head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button? It really helps us get this message to more and more people that we can help. Greatly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐞 Podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Hey there, you derelicts. Welcome to another episode of the 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐞 Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Tomioni, and we have a first of its kind where we have two different guests today. Three males with three very healthy, maybe unhealthy egos. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Three alpha entrepreneurial males on the same podcast together. It's either going to be a complete disaster or it's going to be amazing. So thanks for being here. Jonathan Curian is right here. He's been on the podcast with us before. Thanks for coming back, Jonathan, and then Josh Pashier as well. We actually all got introduced through our coaching group with the infamous Dan Martell and his Buy Back Your Time Blue that we always get to see on all of our coaching calls. So three fellow entrepreneurs, three fellow masculine male people that work with males. We all coach men. We all coach men in kind of different ways, but everything from health to finances to mindset to marriage to divorce. All the things. So we get to hear a lot of different perspectives here. You have single people here, you have married people here, you have people with kids here. There's going to be a lot of really interesting conversation. But here's mainly what we're going to talk about today. We're mainly going to focus on vulnerability and a lot of the reason why maybe it's difficult for us as men to be vulnerable. What's influencing that? Why is it happening? What do we do about it? And more importantly, I would say, how's it holding us back? What's it keeping us from? What authentic life that we all want to live and that the men we coach want to live, what is it keeping us from? What is our purpose? What's our legacy? What do we want to leave behind? So with that, gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Josh. I'm excited to be here.
Same, Josh. Can't wait
Absolutely.
to have this conversation with you guys.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So who wants to start? When we're talking about vulnerability, we all work with men. So here, actually, maybe before I do that, why don't each of you, Jonathan, why don't you start? And then Josh, you just give us like a brief synopsis of the type of men you work with and what you help them with so everybody has an idea of who they're listening to.
Sure. My name is Jonathan Curian. I'm a health, life, and wealth coach. And so I work with men between the ages of 17 and about 50. So a pretty big spectrum. So a lot of the men I work with haven't figured out quite what their identity is yet. And so I try to help them remove the baggage, remove the things that are blocking them from truly seeing themselves to walk in their true, let's say, purpose or the true talent that God has given.
Awesome. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, Josh Pashier. So I work with men who really are, it varies whether they are building a company, going through a divorce, have a dream that they are not started yet. I deal with a lot of limiting beliefs and identifying what those are, and also identifying that their ego may not be there to help them, but be there to keep them safe. And then there comes the fear again. And from being safe, what we'll talk about today is the vulnerability. Their ego does not want them to be vulnerable. The ego wants them to be safe. And so we will talk about how can they be vulnerable and go after their dreams and chase down what they want to do without that limiting belief.
That's good. That's good stuff. And I usually do this at the end, but let's do it at the beginning today. How can people get a hold of you? Because maybe they want to check out more about you as they're listening or watching the episode. Is Instagram a good place for both of you guys? Why don't you give your Instagram handles real quick?
Jonathan, go.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is 𝐼𝐚𝐧𝐭 with an S. Yeah.
Love that. Mine is just Josh Pashier.
Awesome. And those will be in the show notes as well. So since we're talking about vulnerability, maybe we just start with the definition. So I just looked up the definition of vulnerable. And the definition of vulnerable is susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. Susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. Why do you guys think it's hard for us as men to be in that position? What is it about us that you think makes it difficult to be susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm?
I'll jump in. I think it is because society has always told us that we cannot be vulnerable. And just like you were saying, vulnerability is really perceived for a man as weakness. And especially in traditional masculine cultures, right? But really what we need to change is vulnerability is actually a source of strength and courage. And that is where just society is saying vulnerability is not a source of strength, and we need to change that.
How is it a source of strength or courage? What do you think?
If we're being open and honest and authentic, even if we're being uncomfortable, that will help us grow our relationships with our friends, with our spouses, because people want to have a sense of connection. And if I'm not vulnerable with you guys, like we had connected because we were vulnerable with each other. And we saw that there was something that we could all do. Where if I would have came in and wasn't open, we wouldn't have had a connection.
That's so true. And I'll start with being vulnerable. I literally the last couple of weeks I've been struggling, guys. I really have. There's just been a lot going on. For whatever reason, my body's been shutting down. I've been having all these sicknesses. And it's one of those times, I don't know if you guys ever experienced this, where like I'm very much an action-oriented do type of guy. So if something like that starts happening, I'm like, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I putting shit in my body, right? Am I eating sugar? Like, am I having too much caffeine? Am I not drinking enough water, right? Like I go down the list of am I not exercising? Am I doing all these things? There's nothing that checks the box. Like I'm eating as healthy as I possibly can. I'm exercising. Like I'm as healthy as I've ever been in my life at 41, which is pretty amazing. But it's only because of my discipline and consistency and everything else with all these things. So then I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on right now? And I think for me, a lot of the times the idea of even telling you that or being vulnerable with that is that if I don't know how to fix it, right, it's frustrating and I don't know what to do about it. And most likely for me right now, it's stress and I'm allowing things to bother me and I'm not getting my head right. It's probably my head more than my body, just based on the fact that I'm taking care of my body. Maybe I'm not taking care of my head as much. And I know for guys, that can be really true, right? You go on Instagram or anywhere else, even our own business coach, pretty much most of what I see on Instagram or anything else is all about your body. Mm-hmm. Get to the gym, work out more, get bigger muscles, look like Jonathan, that sort of thing. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. Beautiful. That's what hours a day in the gym gets you, right?
That's right.
Which are extremely important. I'm not saying that it's not. I exercise for the same reasons, that I feel good and it, changes everything else. It helps my mental, my spiritual, etc. But there's this element too where that's not complete. That's not a complete picture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, Josh, it might be more of an extensive diet thing that you don't even see, right? So maybe that you're eating healthy now, but you might have ingested some toxins before that are still inside your body that's manifesting as these issues, right? And so what I did recently was fast. So I did a 8-day water fast. And so, after that, my gut was clean. my mind was clear, my spirit was encouraged, right? And so sometimes it's what's inside of us that is causing some unrest, but it takes, depletion in order for us to fully live a fulfilled life. And so, in the same way, we need to be vulnerable, right? So we don't know it, but on the other side of brokenness is our greatest strength.
Hmm.
A lot of the men I talk to, they're afraid to be vulnerable. That's why they host a space with me because they feel that comfort and that ability to share. And so I allow them to speak freely, but even when they're speaking to me, I can feel that little bit of hesitation, like they're still, crawling when they know they can run. And that is that the culture that's trained them to do so.
So before, yeah, I definitely agree with you. But before we start going down this path of being victims to culture, because
Sure.
maybe the culture has trained us to do that.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I could say that a lot of people have trained me to do a lot of the things. I could actually say that my entire history is based on what everyone in my life has trained me what to do, but I still have a choice. I can play the
Yes.
victim role and I can say, okay, well, everybody's trained me to do this, so I have no choice, right?
Right.
It's like people that get triggered. Well, I'm triggered, so you have to change your behavior. No, I should figure out what is within me that's triggered and maybe change that. I shouldn't worry about your behavior because I can't control your behavior. So that being said, maybe society got us there, but without falling into that victim mentality, what do we do about it?
Let me ask you this, for the sake of the audience, how do we get out of that victim mentality? I think that's a better question.
Okay.
Because addressing the root, right? That's why we all specialize as coaches, right? But making a shift in our mental from being the victim to being the victor, right? What does that look like?
Where my mind first goes is that problems need energy to live and things follow energy.
Okay.
So if my energy is focused on what the problem is, and my energy is focused on the fact that everybody else is doing something to me, and my energy is focused on what people are doing to me, then my entire energy is going to be defensive. It's going to be, I got to look out for myself and I don't want to be vulnerable because people are doing all these things to me and I feel like I'm being attacked. Therefore, I need to just cave up, hold myself in this little bubble so that I am not attacked, so that I can stay safe, right? But if my whole focus and my energy is focused on, well, how that's actually affecting me and what I want it to affect. So in other words, if somebody does something to me and it really makes me defensive, I have one of two options. I can either react to that and decide, well, that really upsets me and that really triggers me and it's that person's fault. And I can come into this victim of like, oh, woe is me.
Sure.
Right. Or I can look inside of myself and say, why do I feel defensive?
Yes.
So for me, it starts with staying curious of first, let me be curious about what I'm actually feeling. And if I can be honest with myself about what I'm feeling, and I'm feeling defensive in this example, then I can think about what is it about me that's so defensive here? Like, why am I defensive? And the key to this is curiosity, not shame.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with me feeling defensive.
Not
That's
at all.
completely fine. It's just a matter of why am I feeling defensive?
Right.
Where's that defensiveness coming from? And then questions like, do I want to feel defensive? Because I don't really want to feel defensive right now. I'd rather this person be able to do whatever they want and for it not to affect me in a very healthy way because I just feel confident with whoever I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think you hit it. If we're feeling defensive, the question first, we have a choice. We have a choice to feel defensive or we have a choice not to. Every day we have a choice on how we're going to react. I think the key is if you're identifying right away that you're feeling defensive, Josh, you said it. Why? It probably triggered something within ourselves that we may not like about ourselves. That's why I'm defensive. It triggered something within you. And one thing I'll go with these guys is we talk about the choices that they make. If you're talking to me and I don't like what you're saying, that's okay. Maybe I'm being triggered by that. But that doesn't mean you're right. Doesn't mean I'm wrong or vice versa. But I have the choice on how I'm going to react. We may get into our argument and say, well, you said this and you pissed me off. That's my choice. So look at it, dive deeper. Why did that upset me? Is it something that internally that I don't want to deal with yet?
That's so key. One of the things that I often tell my kids and I try to help them with this reminds me of is when one of my kids comes to me and says that one of my other kids made them feel, those are the key words, blank made me feel blank, fill in the blanks. When they do that, I look at them in the face and I say, they blank cannot make you feel blank. It's
Correct.
not possible. You have a choice. Now, did they do something to trigger some sort of emotion within you? Sure. And I'm very clear with them. It's okay to have your emotion. It's okay to be clear about your emotion. But what you can't do, or what I encourage you not to do, is don't blame anybody else for your emotion. Your emotion is your emotion. No one can do anything to provide any sort of emotion within you whatsoever. And this is easy for me to say to my kids, and then I forget for myself. So let me give you guys an example. I'll be vulnerable here for a moment. About a week ago, I was doing business with a friend, which sometimes is a bad idea. This is a key example why. I think we're just too close, maybe. Doing business with a friend, and they told me that one of the members of their team said that I was an asshole. That very
Have they met you?
I'm
They
sorry?
haven't met you. They haven't met you, have they?
They haven't met me, but they interacted with me via messaging. Okay. And there was something about my messaging that they perceived as me being an asshole. But of course, the comment wasn't, that was an asshole comment. The comment was, he's a fucking asshole or whatever. They didn't say it that extreme, but they said, that guy's an asshole. Okay. When he said that, what I realized, I got very defensive because I don't believe I am an asshole. And I got defensive because of the fact that there was a previous time in my life where I really did act more of an asshole than I do now. And what I realized when I stayed curious about it is like, why are you so defensive and riled up about this? And the reason is because there was a time in my life previously where I acted more like an asshole. So I chose to consider, I went back, I reread messages that I had with this person, and I really tried to stay curious for myself and open to myself. Like, was I being an asshole? Did I send asshole messages? And after I reviewed all of them, I was like, you know what? I wasn't an asshole here. I understand why somebody else maybe didn't appreciate the type of communication. Like it was pretty abrupt and direct, but it wasn't asshole. So I had to really stay curious with myself to try to figure out, okay, number one, I'm not going to shame myself because I'm not an asshole. Because by the way, no one's an asshole. Number two, the second question though was I acting in asshole ways, right? Once I looked at that, I can then either decide yes or no. If the answer is yes, by the way, I'm still not an asshole. I may have acted like an asshole for a moment. Okay. See the difference? And if I did, then I have a choice. What do I do? So now I can make an amends or an apology if I was acting like an asshole. And now I feel like I need to rectify the situation. Right? Fair enough?
Yeah. And a lot of it is going to be each individual's definition of being an asshole.
100%.
Right?
And then the second option, though, is if I decide that I wasn't being that way, then I have to let it go. And then I have to be confident in my nature and who I am and everything else. And this is something that was really difficult for me to learn over the last several years. I used to be a very codependent type person, and I always wanted everybody to like me at all times so that everything was fine. And one of the things that I've had to learn to get out of that is that I have to be okay if somebody thinks I'm an asshole.
Let them.
Let them. Because that's their narrative, and I can't control their narrative of me.
I think when so that example, I get that, and you just sometimes have to let those people be. That's why I said let them think you're an asshole, and then you're going to let yourself know that you're not. Right? There's that decision there, and a lot of times I think people they operate from two things, either out of fear or out of love. And when we're talking to somebody, am I coming from fear, which is going to be my ego, believe it or not, or am I coming from love, which is the vulnerability? Where are we operating from? Check that. And if we're talking to somebody about being defensive, am I defensive because now I'm fearful if something's coming up, or is it operating out of love? I think defensiveness comes from fear.
For sure. And to go along with that too, Josh, is that in that scenario, if I can have love and empathy towards this person that said this about me, then what I can also do is I can also realize maybe this has nothing to do with me.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Maybe this has to do with the fact that I responded in an email similar to how this other guy responded in an email that this person had a very, very bad response to. So guess what? Now they're getting defensive and they're getting insecure and they have fear about it as well. And that allows me just to focus on my side of the street. Like, do I need to go make an amends, an apology? Do I need to rectify the situation? And if not, just have empathy with this person and be like, oh man, that really sucks. Because they must have had a really bad experience before. I feel really bad for them. And then I can move on with my life. It's so much easier said than done, though. I don't know if that's easy for you guys. It's not easy for me.
It's never easy. It's never easy. That's why they call it self-work, right? It's really breaking.
Do you find, Jonathan, with some of the guys that you're talking to, initially it is hard to get them to do the self-work?
It's so hard. It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
So,
why do you think that is?
Because they're never used to it, right? It's kind of like, riding a bicycle, right? At first, when you taught your son how to ride a bicycle, he can only go so far, right? And he would go down the street, come back up the street, go down the street, come back. And by that time, he was tired. He'd be like, oh, I'm too tired. But then after some time, you guys are, biking through a trail or biking through a park. And before long, he's biking all over the streets because he built up the muscle, the conditioning, the practice of riding that bike. In the same way in self-work, I help my clients with meditation, right? And so at first they're like, I can't even meditate for 3 minutes, and I show them that, hey, 10 minutes, 15 minutes is easy. It goes by in a couple breaths, Whereas, I take some of them through like a 2-3 hour meditation and they're like, wow, they come out on the other side of it completely different. So but I don't start them off with a 3 hour meditation, I start them off with a 15-minute meditation and then maybe a 1 hour meditation. And so then I give them those capability to be like, okay, I can do this. I can make a change. I can come out the different person. I can be better in my relationships. And we focus on that.
Yeah. And that comes from finding out the shit they didn't want to find out.
Correct.
Or the shit they were scared of. And that's why it's hard to find men that are willingly right away jump in to finding out the stuff about themselves.
Well, I think you already mentioned it earlier. And that is, at least maybe for the three of us that are, I don't know if you guys would consider yourself type A, but guys that like to get stuff done, action oriented, that sort of thing. I think that the difficult thing, at least for me in that context, is that if I go to work and there's one specific action that I do and I know it's going to produce some sort of result, I can see it. I'm like, okay, well, if I do this and then I do this and I do this and it's going to do that result. Or Jonathan, you with your lifting as an example. If I lift this and I do this amount, then I'm going to have this muscle, etc. Relationships don't always work like that. Like I could go do the reps in a relationship and not have a better relationship.
I mean, I think at that point you're working out the wrong muscle.
Maybe, or maybe the muscle that I'm working out is becoming more authentically me. And then the more authentically me I become, the more retracted somebody else is. Because that's what I found. I mean, you guys are married, so you're in a different situation than me as a single man who's been divorced. But for myself, what I found is that the more authentic I became to myself in my marriage, the more it actually retracted my spouse, because they weren't actually attracted to the authentic me. They were attracted to the other version of me. And what I found in my life is that the more authentic I become to myself, the more people either just flock to me and they love me, or the more people are repelled by me and they're like, that guy's an asshole. Those are just the only, like, the more authentic I get, the more extreme that gets. Like the less authentic I get, the more people are always kind of like in the middle, like, oh yeah, he's a good guy or whatever, right? But if I'm like really being me, then people either love me or they hate me. I don't know about you guys if you've experienced that, but that's what I've experienced.
And you kind of brought up marriage. And I'm divorced, recently married, about 1.5 years. But the thing that is making my marriage now so much better than my other one is our ability to grow together. Like there's personal development that we both do together and she's the one that kind of brought it on. She introduced me to it. And I say, as a couple, the number one thing you can do is grow together through the personal development together.
Have you guys ever met a relationship where one person is growing and trying to become more authentically themselves and everything else, and the other person isn't, and it works?
No.
It doesn't ever work, right? Like if you're on either trajectory, it works. Like if you're both just going to the pit of whatever the hell you're going to the pit of, great, go for it. be this crazy, addictive, insane couple. I've been that couple before in relationships. It works great until eventually it blows up because one of the people decides, I don't want to do this anymore. Or be in the other side where you're both growing, both becoming more authentically you, etc. That also works. But the relationships that end are always because they get to some T in the road. One person goes this way, one person goes this way. And it's not that one's better than the other. It's just that this person decides to dig in, this person decides to dig out, and then it's over at some point.
Right.
And the thing that got, when you have one person growing and the other not, that person that's growing tends to want that person to grow with them. But what happens when you try to make somebody else do something you want? They're going to fight
backfires.
you. Yeah. And I will say that the biggest thing that Brooke did for me, she just kind of teased me with what she was doing and didn't never really say, you need to do this. It was like, oh, if you're interested, listen to this. If you're interested, listen to this. So in a way, she made it my idea, even though she was totally there, kind of putting it on. And I think that's really how it is. Like you get sometimes maybe the women are the one that want to grow together, and the guys are saying, I don't need that stuff. But as soon as the guy can come around and be vulnerable to growing, and they're both there, man, that's so powerful.
Yeah, my wife and me are in this season right now where we're growing spiritually. And so we've invested into a course that we both review on a daily basis. We go through one course and then we discuss it, take an action item, and then we grow spiritually through the process. And it's made our relationship jump leaps and bounds into an area where we're no longer operating as our old selves, but operating in a new selves, moving towards our future self, And so it's really changed our perspective on a lot of things. And I think that, like you said, Josh, there's just power when two come together. Yeah.
100%.
How are you seeing that kind of transform your relationship, Jonathan? Can you speak to that? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So pretty much everything that's wrong with me, I began to identify, right? I began to call those things out on a continual basis. We have a whole framework that we work through. And we work through all the different levels, right, of spirit, soul, and body. And so as we're addressing these different steps, it's like, okay, where are the blockages, And then after we address the blockage that we're facing, we can actually come see a positive aspect of what's next. And that becomes our new truth, right? We're so, kind of, I don't want to say hypnotized to live life one way when truly life is exciting. It's dangerous. It's wild, like the best part of life is pain. I don't know if you guys experience this, but obviously people like to be happy, people like to be content, people like to be materialistic, but is it true life? I think true life comes through pain, just like birthing a child. There's the greatest joy that comes out of it. Or, breaking down myself. I mean, I can tell you guys, me being vulnerable, I'm about to go into the scariest season of my life. I'm going into a new arena that I'm excited about, but very nervous. But at the same time, I can't wait because I know on the other side of what's next is my destiny. And I'm leaning in, My wife just, we were talking earlier. She's like, are you nervous? Are you scared? I was like, nothing. I'm at peace because I know that this is what needs to happen.
Do you mind if I ask?
Yeah, is that more work or personal or
Sure. So, I'm an entrepreneur by heart, right? But, as, I shared with Derelict that, my wife and me are living separately. And so, I'm bringing my family back together. In order to do that, I've started taking on some new roles and responsibilities as far as, getting a, overnight job at a hospital to provide for my family. I mean, it's something that I haven't worked a day in my life. I've always owned a business. And so stepping into that arena is like stepping into a fire pit. It's like now I have authority over me. I have people that will, I'll probably be cleaning up poop, but now I get a different sense of what it takes to go the distance. Maybe I would have never transcended into the father my kids need to be, the husband my wife needs me to be, the leader my community needs me to be. but now I'm willing to do the things that others aren't in order to show that maybe perhaps being abnormal is the key to success.
What about that is scary to you?
What about that scary? All of it. I'm so used to my time and my freedom that being in a set position, dude, I've traveled probably every 2 years of my life. You know, I've been to about 45 different countries, lived in several different states from California, New York, from different countries from, you know, here in America to Qatar to India. And so now, as I'm making a commitment, it's like now I'm putting roots down in a place, you know? And so that in itself is a whole new realm for me and my family. Because even when I had kids, we would travel nonstop. We would travel to, you know, different states, Kentucky, Illinois, and we would just move around with freedom because I owned a business. But now switching from a 1099 to a W-2 is a whole different ballgame, you know? At the same time, juggling the businesses, juggling the family, and really seeing what's next, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. Because everything that's happened so far on this journey, I mean, this is a brand new journey that I embarked on in the past 10 days, you know? Everything that's happened up to this point has been a divine appointment, you know, even to this call. You know, I see it as a confirmation of what's next. And I'm excited, you know, it's going to be authentically me. And Derelict, that's what it takes to be the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most authentic, maybe not the best. Like I wouldn't use those words, but
Okay.
maybe, I don't know, the most authentic version of myself, right?
Yeah, sure.
I read this quote the other day. Eckhart Tolle says, it's not the situation, it's your narrative that causes suffering. I thought that was really powerful because it's not circumstances in our life that causes suffering. And here's how you prove this. You guys have both experienced this as well, because we all have. You can watch two people go through the exact same circumstances in their life, whether it's getting a car accident, Josh, you were talking about that earlier, somebody getting cancer, some other health issue, etc. You can watch two people go through almost identical, if not identical, circumstances in their life. One seems to be suffering, one doesn't. What's the only difference? It's not the circumstances.
That's how they told the story.
It's how they told the story. If they are going through that situation, or I'll just take myself, I've gone through plenty of situations like this, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm suffering, I'm suffering, I'm suffering, I'm suffering, I'm suffering, I'm suffering. Let me give you an example. I was coaching. I don't usually do a lot of health coaching, but I was health coaching a client of mine the other day, and he was talking about the fact that it was, first of all, it was, you know, almost the middle of the night, really hungry, didn't have a lot of food options around, which already is going to put you in a bad place if you're trying to be healthy. Shouldn't be eating in the middle of the night anyway. That's a whole nother story, right? But he just decided blood sugar so low, got to get some food. The only thing that's open is McDonald's. And as he's telling me this story, here he's already feeling shame, because he's already feeling shame for eating terrible food. He's already feeling shame for getting off of his diet. He's already feeling shame for all of these things. And then he basically says, well, you know, it's the middle of the night. I don't have any other options. I had to get some food. My blood sugar was low. I had to eat something. Those are all stories in his mind, right? He didn't actually have to do any of those things. He wouldn't have died if he wouldn't have eaten at midnight. He wouldn't have. He would have been okay, right? He wouldn't have died. He would have been okay. But even telling the story, this is what I encouraged him. I said, look, but you didn't have to do all those things. I understand what you're saying, but you didn't have to. And then he kind of immediately got defensive. He's like, well, yeah, but I'm just explaining. But I was like, no, you're not explaining. What you're doing is you're putting yourself in a victim state of, well, I didn't have any other options, and here was the circumstances, and this is what I had to do, which is disempowering. And he didn't even realize by having that story, he wasn't trying to make excuses. He was just trying to set up the story, but he wasn't realizing that even by doing that, he was making himself a victim that was suffering based on the circumstances, right?
Right.
How often do you guys, I mean, I do that stuff all the time. Like, well, if I only had this, or I only had this, or I only had, right? Jonathan, you could easily do that with the example you just gave us. Well, if I had only saved more money, and if I had only, like, if this client had only said yes, and if this guy had only moved forward, then I wouldn't be in this position where I have to do this, and now I have to go clean up shit at a hospital, and I'm suffering because of it, and my life sucks and everything else. Or the way you said it, I get an opportunity to do something new that's different, to provide for my family, to show them I'm going to make it work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not only that, I get to serve hundreds of people at a hospital. I mean, that is my biggest desire, to coach, to help, to serve. And now I get a salary for it.
Pretty cool.
I told the president of the hospital, like, hey, I'm coming to help. So, I hope I can bring more value and uplift the whole facility as I'm there. And that was my perspective going in.
So let's bring this around. How do we, as men who work with men, who coach men, how do we, and for anybody watching and listening, how do we encourage other men to deal with their failures, to deal with their shortcomings, to deal with the things that are happening, to be vulnerable with those and realize that that's actually their strength and that's how they're going to be able to move forward? How do we encourage men to do that? Josh, how have you found that's really helpful with your work with men that you can draw that out of?
The first is me showing them that I'm vulnerable, number one. But the other one is I work on them with reframing vulnerability and reframing what vulnerability means to them. Because if we change the narrative around vulnerability, it can help them see it as a strength rather than a weakness. And that,
can you give us an example?
Sure, absolutely. So if I can shift my mindset to vulnerability as my strength, it will increase my confidence and also encourages what I call authentic expression if I'm being more vulnerable. And then it's also a safe sharing spot for them, right? Right now we have a spot where we can be vulnerable because we're safe. It's a safe place to share. And then we also work on with the guys embracing discomfort, because being vulnerable often will mean stepping out of their comfort zone. So they have to embrace the discomfort and view it as a sign of growth rather than just being uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with it. So a lot of it is reframing that aspect of vulnerability.
That's fascinating, because then vulnerability isn't this position where I'm exposed to something negative and some fear and danger and everything else that's happening. Right. Vulnerability now is actually a way for me to become more authentic version of myself, which is a source of strength.
Yeah, well, and I was just going to say, think of it as the power of vulnerability. The power of vulnerability allows me to foster much stronger and intimate relationships. It allows me to be more empathetic and understanding of their struggles, right? It allows me to really listen to understand instead of listen to respond. And then it's the growth, because vulnerability is essential to personal growth.
So true, Josh.
That's awesome.
And I see it now. So I get most Thursday nights, I won't say every Thursday night, most Thursday nights, especially during the summertime, I get together with a bunch of guys, the guys from my old neighborhood. Sometimes we have about 10 of us. We'll throw bags, and it's just a way for the guys to let loose, right? At first, I was afraid to let them really know what I'm doing, coaching men on whatever. But now what I found, more and more of them, we have better conversations now as a group, where before it'd be one-off. They would want to talk to me privately because of the vulnerability, right? And I provided a safe place for them. But now we've been doing this for 5 years. The guys all know each other, but it's just now we got to the point where we can all have a conversation and everybody knows that they're there to support and it's a safe spot. And that has taken a while, right? I think I had to get comfortable sharing myself first before they allowed themselves to do that as well, right? And they're always going to have, go ahead. They're always going to have struggles or a challenge of embracing vulnerability, right? We have fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of losing control. That is all part of being vulnerable. But if I can get over that fear of judgment, right? Reframe the judgment as a reflection of others' insecurities, not our own.
Oh, that's good. Say that again.
So by reframing vulnerability, we reframe the judgment. We said fear of judgment. Reframing the judgment as a reflection of others' insecurities, not our own. Just like you had discussed earlier with being defensive or that person calling you an asshole. Why? Maybe it was their own insecurity by reading an email that was maybe written in a different way that triggered, right? And we got to think of, so by reframing these things, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of losing control, it now brings the vulnerability to a power. Because I understand, like, I'm not going to lose control. I can accept and focus on the present moment rather than the outcome. Because control means what? I want to control an outcome. I want something. But if I can release that and just focus on the present moment, I don't need to worry about the outcome right now. I focus on that present moment.
That's so good. That's so good. And for me too, I can be a pretty black and white extreme type of person. It's just a lot of how I'm wired, I think. And even with this, I can go to those extremes. But to use your example, to go back to my example of the whole asshole thing, there's always two pieces of it. Like, can I empathize and realize what this person might be going through? And then also, what do I take responsibility for myself? And it's probably both. Like it's usually not either, right? It's usually not, I was 100% an asshole, I was 0% an asshole. There's probably something in between. So there's probably something I can take responsibility for. And then there's also a lot of stuff I can't take responsibility for that I got to let go, that I just have to have some empathy for the situation that they're going through. It's good stuff, man.
And again, it's coming from a place of love rather than coming from that place of fear. And then if you want to go deeper into it, this may be a whole nother conversation for a podcast later. It's your feminine energy against your masculine energy. Everybody has it. Men don't want to hear that they have feminine energy. It's not being male or female, but getting the shit done, taking action, taking inspired action is masculine. Feminine energy is meditating, journaling, dream setting, right? Imagination. That can be the feminine, and it has to work together because everybody has it, right? Believing that I am this person. Like you've heard of be, do, have, or belief, faith, knowing, or what Dan even says. It's more of like the faith, I forget the second one, and timing. Timing is in the faith, knowing how much time do you spend each day being the person you want to be in the future, as opposed of a victim, we'll say, mindset today. So I should act as if I'm already that person now. Like if you're coaching somebody on, like, or Josh, if you have, everybody has an internal temperature of income, whether they think so or not. If somebody makes $100,000 a year, they lose their job, they may not go after a $50,000 job. They're going to go after a 120, right? They want to raise. Somebody making 50 grand a year, do you think they're going to feel qualified to go after a $100,000 job? Even though they might be in sales, this might be different resources, different industry, right? But maybe they're just as good. So you have that internal temperature that we got to raise to get them up there. And it's just, I went down a rabbit hole. Apologize.
It's a good rabbit hole. It's absolutely, because you're going to limiting mindsets and limiting beliefs, and where I believe I should be is where I'm going to be. Like it's impossible for me to get past that ceiling of wherever I believe I'm going to be, which is why most people, for most of their lives, make about the same income within a range, live about the same lifestyle within a range, have about the same amount of friends within a range. I mean, because this is the range. And until we can break through that range and realize, like, no, I'm worthy and I'm abundant and I'm available for this or this or this or whatever it is, then it doesn't happen.
Correct. Now, that doesn't mean I can just sit here and it'll all come to me. Right. Yeah. But I still need to find that inner peace and take a moment to sit and reflect and listen. But from that, you still got to take the inspired action. You got to get shit done and move in. But that means moving to who that person is that you want to be 5 years down the line. Be that person today.
So this makes me think of what we were talking a little bit earlier that we're going to talk about, and that's purpose. Because purpose. So here's another quote for you guys. Sol Hicks, who's written several books, great guy if you've never read any of his stuff. Sol Hicks says, your purpose must be greater than your pain. And going back to suffering, Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which if you haven't read it, you got to read it. It's one of my top favorite books of all time. And essentially his story is that he was in the concentration camps back in the day, and he was basically just observing. He's a psychologist, just observing how everyone was responding, and was observing dramatic differences from people having the same experience in concentration camps. Wrote the entire book. Nazis stole it from him, destroyed everything, and then his purpose became, I have to get out of here to rewrite the book. Rewrote it from memory after he got out. One of the best books ever read. One of the things he said in there is, he said, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning.
Say that again.
Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. You guys, this is true for you. It's true for me. It's true for other men we know. A man with a very strong purpose and a very strong meaning can go through some amazingly terrible, terrible, terrible things. So
purpose is the driving force for behind what we do and why we do it.
What do you guys see when you're coaching men, either about how they're lacking purpose or they're distracted from their purpose, or helping men. Let's get real practical for a second. I want you guys to help me with this too. Let's all help each other. How do we get back to a point where we're so focused on this purpose, we know exactly what this mission purpose is, to where we can go through hell? What do you guys think? What are some practical ways?
First, they got to become vulnerable. They have to understand what their purpose is, because I think a lot of times they've never really thought about what their purpose is. And they have to identify what that means. And you can't just say, oh, my purpose is to provide income every month so my family can pay the bills and eat. But truly, what does it mean? What's your fulfillment going to be? What's the direction you're going to take? What actions are you going to take to do that? But really understanding what they want to do, which means they have to dive deeper. They got to peel the layers of the onions off, right? And find out really what is their purpose? What are their core values? If you ask a man, what are your core values? I don't know if a lot of them are going to have that off the top of their head, right? And their core values will vary, but they have to be able to be vulnerable to understand what their purpose is with themselves and really understand.
Give us an example. What would you say is an example of a purpose or a core value?
My purpose is leaving a legacy. We talked about legacy. You know, what is it? The legacy can include anything of my relationships with my children, right? But my purpose is to have my boys be a better man than I am.
There you go. There's a good purpose.
My purpose is to show them, right? Now, through transparency, they're not beating me in anything right now. I want them to be a better person than I am. So if we're playing basketball or behind the boat wakeboarding or playing tennis, they will not beat me yet. Because I remember the day that I beat my dad in tennis. I remember the day I beat my dad in basketball, right? It wasn't given. I didn't get a freaking participation trophy. So I want to show the boys, I want them to do that too. I want them to remember the day that they beat me in whatever.
Just
right?
play video games with them. They'll beat you all the day.
Yeah, I know. I don't play video games because of that reason. No, just kidding. But the purpose would be, I want them to be better than I am. So already, you know, encouraging them to read books that I maybe just read last year, right? And talk to them about, I don't need the comfort or the approval of my friends. And here's why. Now, when you're 16 years old, that's a big pill to swallow. But I want to start having those conversations now, right?
Well, I think about my son, and he's 12, and when I was 12 years old, I didn't even know how to express what emotion I was feeling, let alone have any idea what to do about it, yet alone have any idea what a healthy activity would be in order to process it and go through it. None of that stuff. I didn't learn that stuff till I was in my mid-30s. So for me, when I look at my son and he's going through something, me just trying to help him express that, to try to figure out what he's going through, be curious about what he's going through, and then know how to manage it in some sort of healthy way. If he can even get an inch of that, he's light years ahead of where I was when I was 12. Because when I was 12 and I felt a scary, bad emotion, I would go in my room, turn off my lights, turn on my black light, listen to grunge, terrible, disturbing, gross music that made me depressed and want to kill myself. That's literally where I was at when I was 12. So if my 12-year-old will say, man, I'm really struggling with this is what's going on, etc. Fuck yeah, that's a win, right? So I think when you were saying things like, I loved your example of them winning against you and then beating you, and at the same time, your examples were all sports and other things, right? I think that there's also this idea of, well, are they more vulnerable? Are they more emotionally attuned? Spiritually, are they there? I had this conversation with my son the other day because he was all my kids were here for a long time. We had snow days. There was school off. We all ended up getting sick. It was just a fun week in a lot of ways. And I could tell there was several times, like my son was kind of the last one not getting sick. And he was like trying to take care of me, which I really appreciated. And I really appreciated his spirit and everything else. And then there were several times though that I had to catch myself and look at him and be like, it's not your job to take care of me. I appreciate you. I appreciate your empathy. I appreciate your concern. I appreciate your willingness to help. I appreciate all of those things. And I also want to make sure that you know that that's not your responsibility. I'm your father. Let me also take care of you, because that just triggers my idea of when I was a kid and felt like I had to take care of my parents because they were always fighting and at each other. And I had to be the mediator and I had to be the adult. I don't want to put my 12-year-old son in that position. I want him to know how to also receive care, because that's something that, again, I'm still learning how to do as a 41-year-old man. So for me, I love that, Josh. And one of my biggest purposes for sure is that with my kids, to be able to help them be more just attuned with who they are and be more authentically themselves. Man, I consider that a win. If my kids just grow up and they're just authentically themselves, what bigger win could you have as a parent? I don't know.
True.
Because that authenticity is not going to be doing anything terrible, at least in my firm belief. I believe everyone at their core, their authentic self, the way that they were built or created or designed or whatever word you want to use, is this pure, beautiful, amazing, authentic soul. And if we can get back to that, the world would be an amazing place. It really would. The reason that it's not is because we have all these insecurities and fears and hurt and everything else that's fucking it all up and making us defensive. John,
But it was also a good thing that your son was willing to step up and help take care of dad while dad was
100%.
down.
100%. I had to toe that line very carefully and tell him how much I appreciated him and how much I appreciate all his support and everything else, but then also make him feel like he's not responsible to do these things. He's not responsible for somebody else. He's not responsible for somebody else's emotions. He's not responsible for making me feel okay, right? I don't want him getting in that enmeshed codependent trap where he feels like it's his responsibility to have my emotions feel a certain way. There's no way. That's a terrible position to be, especially as a child.
100%.
What else, you guys? As we wrap up here, is there anything that you could think of that you just want to leave men on vulnerability, their purpose, where they're going in their life? Something.
Yeah, I would say practice gratitude, right? The practice of gratitude will bring out a side of you that you always had, but you never knew you did. It'll help you traverse through every situation that you come across in life that you seem as broken or challenging. With a simple task of gratitude, it goes a long way. So either say it out loud, write it down in a journal, and then as you do that, step out in faith, in action, and help someone. A lot of times, you're not going to worry about your own issues, especially when you're helping someone else. And then once you start helping someone else, then you'll get to see what the real issues were inside of you. And then with the mindset of gratitude, with the action of helping someone, you'll then be able to really take the time to work on yourself. And there, you're able to move to a place where you're always destined to be. But it took that first step of being grateful for the challenge that you first faced.
Absolutely, brother. I love that. You know, I would say one surefire way, if you feel like you are suffering and your head is in this place of I'm suffering, one surefire way of getting out of the mentality of suffering is to go find somebody to serve. If you're serving somebody else and you're helping them out of love and compassion and empathy for them, it's impossible to suffer.
So hard.
And I would say closing thought is embrace the vulnerability and reframe vulnerability as a power, as a strength. Most men will not do that. No, I'm not saying you're going to be sitting over there in the corner crying all the time, right? But you can, and share that with somebody, right? Because my wife will say, and I'll be vulnerable. I will watch TV and I got tears going down my eyes. Before I would try to hold it in. I don't hold it anymore. I don't care. I don't care, right? I'm at that spot where if I'm vulnerable and you see that, it's fine. But Jonathan, I love the fact that you said gratitude, and it leads to like get a morning routine down, but beyond just maybe going to the gym. It's like what Jonathan said. Write down 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. Journal. Like a lot of guys, no, that doesn't mean you're going to get a pink fancy book and write in a journal, right? You can have it whatever you want. And even if you don't know what you're writing about. Yeah, see, it can be like that. It can be like that. You know, just start writing and journal, because we put stuff down on paper. A lot of it tends to come true more than if we just keep it up in our head. But start a morning routine with the gratitude, with journaling, try to meditate. If like Jonathan, you said, if it only works for 3 minutes at a time, you got to start somewhere, because you got to calm the mind. And that's going to be different for a lot of guys. But the biggest thing, see vulnerability as a strength, because it is a strength. Where if we see people that want to or now the three of us will see if we see a guy that's struggling to be vulnerable, or they're telling me vulnerable is a weakness, I know the opposite. But use that and be there. Because no one's going to benefit more than the people around us if we're vulnerable.
Absolutely, brother. Present. And for the fellow analytics out there, just a real quick comment about journaling. If you're in your head, you're dead. You got to get it out somehow, whether it's journaling, whether it's processing it verbally, whether it's getting out in nature and just screaming it out, whatever it is, a lot of my problems are problems that are strictly in my head, that if I get them out of my head, no longer become problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And journaling and meditating and exercising, all that stuff will help.
You guys, thanks for joining today. This was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation, you guys.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, guys.
Well, again, first time here on the podcast having two different guys on, but I think it worked well. So again, in the show notes, remember to check out Josh and Jonathan. Go connect with them on Instagram and hear more of what they have to say. Both awesome guys. Appreciate you guys so much for being here. If you liked the episode, like, subscribe, send this to a dude who you want to be vulnerable with. And be like, hey, can we do this stuff together? Vulnerability is a power. It's a strength. It's not a weakness. Send it to somebody that you think you'd be open to doing that with and that would be open to doing that with you. Hold each other accountable, you guys. Because if you don't have somebody holding you accountable, you're not going to do it. Promise, right? Everybody agree with that? Absolutely. All right, guys. Until next time, we'll see you later, you derelicts.